Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So now let's look at this. The bill is to nationalize the Federal Reserve. This is a fine thing to do. There are some limitations. The National Emergency Employment Defense Act, December 17, 2010, sponsored by Kucinich and others, and usually we'd expect to see DeFazio, Kaptur, and a couple of others. The idea being that the federal government gets into the lending business by nationalizing the Federal Reserve and making it a part of the executive branch. Good. This is what you want to do. The Federal Reserve has to be seized and nationalized, has to become part of the Treasury, a bureau of the Treasury, has to operate under public law, House, Senate, signed by the President. Interest rates, categories of lending, money supply, all main decisions by public law. Put economics back into politics, get somewhere to revive politics, right? We've had 100 years of the main economic stuff being taken out of the Congress. Let's put it back in. So the federal government will lend new money into general circulation. Now, the problem with the way that this is set up is the things that the bill contemplates: health care, mortgage related spending, schools, fire departments, and infrastructure. This is a mixture. The people in the Democratic Party who wrote the bill don't have a systematic distinction, which they absolutely have to have, between a capital budget and current expenditure. You can't use Federal Reserve nationalized credit for current expenditures except in an extreme emergency. You can argue that we're in that, but that's got to be seen as a transitory phase. It can't be the structural permanent goal to simply pay current expenditures with new money created by a nationalized Fed. On the other hand, when it comes to the capital budget, the capital goods and infrastructure budget, heavy-duty investments in infrastructure and so forth, that's where the 0% credit should come in. So I would say this bill is a basis of discussion. The thing is, you can't say that, for example, the nationalized Fed is simply going to monetize all the existing debt, just buy up all the existing debt and spew that money out into the system as paper money to retire debt. No, that is not the way to do it. There's no reason to do this. This essentially is a reaction to the right-wing hysteria about deficits and debt. The idea of having a funded national debt, as Alexander Hamilton shown, can be an advantage. Obviously, you want to limit the amount of money you're paying in debt service in the budget. That's a critical component. But what's missing in this Kucinich bill, I guess we have to call it that, the Kucinich bill to nationalize the Fed does not say anything about the use of this preferentially for capital goods which are productive. It does mention infrastructure. Infrastructure is on the list, along with schools, fire departments, the mortgage crisis, and health care, and the monetization of the debt. But you're mixing apples and oranges. Plus, we also have to specify that all the operations are done under public law, and we've got to specify 0% federal credit in the emergency right now for productive activity only. Now, Congressman Kucinich is not capable of a distinction between productive and non-productive. And indeed, many of the things that are productive, that are essential, such as the 100 nuclear reactors, the 100,000 miles of fast rail, in particular the 100 reactors, he would regard as anathema. He would put this money into green jobs. And if you put it into green jobs, meaning windmills, solar cells, and the rest of this hokum, the more of those you have, the poorer you are. So fine, let's have a debate about this. This is a beginning. It is deeply flawed, but it does have the undoubted merit of opening a discussion on this question. Now, some examples of the crisis that we're in. The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization says we've just gone through an oil price shock. We have a world food price shock, says the FAO in Rome. Their index has gone up. Their index of wheat, corn, rice, vegetables, oils, dairy products, sugar, and meat has jumped to 214.7 points worldwide, which is greater than the peak of 213.5 set at the height of the bubble, the world derivatives bubble back in June 2008. This is critical. The Financial Times reported this week that the price of British North Sea Brent crude went over $95 a barrel in the past week. These are indications of inflation and other problems coming up. But let's look now at the underlying issue, the real economy. For example, if you're going to have a bill on the Federal Reserve, you've got to include, at least in a general way, how this money is going to be spent. Let's look at the Wall Street Journal of January 6th. Here we're looking at the Charleroi Locks and Dam near Belle Vernon, Pennsylvania. Now, this is the internal waterways of the United States. Coal from Appalachia to the power plants along the Ohio River Valley. This complex is on the lower Monongahela River, not that far from Pittsburgh. The Charleroi Locks and Dams, 75 years old. There are two locks. One of them is permanently out of service. The one that remains is a set of crumbling concrete. Pieces of steel hang loose, threatening to gouge barges as they pass. Part of the river is blocked by construction. For barge operators, Charleroi is a choke point on the river. You can be here for 2 hours or 12 hours, says one operator of a series of barges and tugs. Now, this is the province of the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers has been under heavy attack by the financiers, notably by the Washington Post, with a series of water-gating, defamatory, slanderous stories over the past couple of decades. And the result is, here we have the Charleroi Locks, 30 miles southeast of Pittsburgh, typical of much of the nation's waterway infrastructure. You don't hear much about this, right? Bulk carriers, the tremendous advantages of water transportation for heavy things like coal or grain. The Army Corps of Engineers maintains 12,000 miles of waterways, 241 locks. They move 1/6 of the nation's freight. 54% of the locks in the United States are 50 years old or more. 36% are more than 70 years old. And on this particular lock, I think it's something like 13 million tons of coal come through there. And, of course, we've got the National Wildlife Federation saying that all of this should be shut down. And I'm afraid the answer to that has to be no. It would take about $1.5 billion to rebuild the Charleroi Locks project. We better get busy and do it, because without this, you're going to have places that will have no coal and therefore no electricity. Not so good. In January 2010, a year ago, near Greenup, Kentucky, a 51-year-old lock broke and delayed traffic on the Ohio River. Now, the very modest bill, which is before Congress, is to spend $7.6 billion for the lock and dam system over 20 years. It's ridiculous. Just this one lock is $1.5 billion. Make it a $75 billion program over 3 years. And here is where you use the 0% federal credit, because these are capital goods. These are going to be around for 50 to 100 years, depending on the quality standard you use. So that's what we need, and that's what Kucinich should build into this Fed bill. Back in a minute.